Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Doug. I'm the media officer of the club. Our president and vice president are both out of town, along with our treasurer, and it looks like both of our event coordinators. So it's just me and Brenda here tonight. So we're going to go ahead and do we'll do our officers' reports. I don't know, for the media officer side, everything seems to be going good with Facebook and all that other stuff. Swarmline is still going. We're now getting into the point where I'm getting a lot of cutout calls instead of actual swarms. So if you think you can do a cutout, let me know and I'll get you on that list. But with that also being said, I did get one today. There's a person, they've got a dead tree and it fell over, and inside that tree is a hive, and it broke open to the point where we can access the hive. So one of our members, Xander, is going to go get it tomorrow. If you guys want to go out there and watch and see what he's doing, come see me at the end of the meeting. I'll give you his number so you guys can call and text or text him, and then make arrangements to meet him out there so you can kind of see this removal from a tree. So another thing, the Q&A that we've been doing the last 2 months, we haven't had anybody attending yet. So I'm kind of want to know what you guys think. Are we giving you guys enough information during these meetings that we don't need the Q&A anymore? Or would it be better if we did it on a different time or day?
Hi, we're brand spanking new to all of this. Can we, how do we access like a Q&A?
So in the Q&A, what it was a Zoom link. I have it posted on Facebook. The link is also posted on our website. And the Q&A was the second Wednesday, or the fourth Wednesday of every month at 6:30. It was just a straight online, no format, just come in, ask questions. And at the beginning of the year, it's always really, really attended. It usually slacks off. It just this year it's slacked off a lot earlier than it's done in the past years. You know, and I'm usually the guy that runs it, so I don't mind being there, but I just don't, but getting on and setting time and sitting there and all of a sudden looking at myself. I know I'm kind of pretty, but I'm not that pretty.
What day was it again on?
It's the fourth Wednesday of the month. It's 6:30. And like I said, it's a Zoom only thing. And if we got enough interest, we'll keep going. But if we don't have, a few people that want to show up, it's not worth my time to sit there. So, any thoughts on that? It's been going out in the newsletter. It's been posted on Facebook. It's just.
Are you looking at suspending it for a period of time?
Well, that's what I want to do. I mean, I'm more than willing to keep doing it as long as we got interest. But if I'm the only guy showing up every week, it's kind of pointless. I get yelled at if I talk to myself. So.
And you said that was at 6:30?
It's at 6:30, and it's the fourth Wednesday. I mean, if you want, we'll go ahead and try to do it. We'll go ahead and try to do it again since we got a lot of new people in here. We'll do it and try to do it again this month.
Okay.
And if not, we'll address it next month. Let's go ahead and do the treasurer and secretary report.
Well, as far as the secretary, I don't have anything. All of that stuff that he's talking about, the swarm line, everything, I also have links in the newsletter. So if you get the newsletter, you can also access all that information, and it's way at the bottom. And I just leave it there every month. As far as the treasurer's report, we have $4,110.43 in the bank account and $0 in PayPal. So, and that's all I've got.
So, this month, since everybody, how is everybody's hives doing? Has anybody done any mite counts lately? You know what your mites are? You got one person?
Oh man, you guys are beekeepers, you're varroa keepers. My mites are going up. So I went from like zeros to now I'm seeing ones and twos. Which for this time of year, for me, that's too much. What's it do different? Well, my neighbors aren't treating their mites, so I'm getting a lot of influx to my gas. Their mite bombs are exploding. And their hives are weak, so my bees, instead of going to get nectar, because there's a lot of nectar now, try stealing honey from them, and they bring the honey in and grow it back into my hive. That'd be my guess.
And how are you treating it?
So I'm gonna do the oxalic towels
Are you doing it now or?
right now, because if you don't treat your mites now, like every mite that goes in your cat food, 5 come out. And so it's exponential as to how many mites you have, and right now, they're kind of shutting down because at least my bees are, because there isn't a lot of flow going on. So
You're not using towels so far though.
what have I used so far this year? Well, I had towels in California, and then I treated with oxalic as soon as they got here. I did splits, and any splits that basically were rootless, I treated with oxalic, because that kills 100%. Oxalic, vaporized oxalic doesn't kill anything in caps. So I don't bother if there's caps, because 80% of the mites are in the cap root. And then I just count, and I didn't have any counts until actually last weekend, when I started to see a lot of 1s and 2s. That's normal. I mean, they go up this time of year. But if you don't treat it now, you're gonna have a lot of mites pretty soon. And then in August, they start shutting down, and the mites are going up, the bees are going down, you're gonna get collapse.
So when do you switch to something else, or not something
Yeah.
else, but additional?
Sure, well, so, yes, you should treat with something else. A lot of times I'll treat with like Thymol or something else, Formic in the spring. I personally try and stick to the quote unquote organic stuff. I don't really use the Appabar and other kind of, I guess, synthetic chemicals. That doesn't, I don't know, it's just my preference. But right now I'm running honey super xyrated, so I cannot use anything. You can't use a lot of those with honey supers. So I'm very limited on what I can run.
You take the honey supers off, then you treat with oxalic.
So right now, so when I did the vapor, I didn't have any honey supers on. So I did that before I had any honey supers. So I did that right after splits. If I was gonna add a new queen, I'd let them be queenless for a bit, and then I, let that brood kind of go, and then hit them with oxalic, then add the new queen to it. And now that they've built up and I put supers on, oxalic vapors kind of out of the question. There's too much brood in right now. There's just a lot of brood, and so 80% of the mites are in the brood. The vaporizer will do it. So I'm gonna use the shop towel method. So you make, you basically mix oxalic acid with vegetable glycol, and then we use the Swedish towel on it. Watch Randy Oliver's, you got a whole,
Who is it?
Randy Oliver, the scientific beekeeper, he's got a whole thing on it.
And I'm sorry, it's in the newsletter,
Okay.
for last month, the link to the scientific beekeeper, and
Yeah.
also just a rough recipe.
So I'm doing the vaporizer like that. I got my first nuke, the first nuke a month ago, and the guy got him on stage, treat him every week for a month. But now there's a lot of brood in there, so now I'm wondering.
So the idea behind treating them, so right, cat brood, so BMAT, how long does it take for brood to be capped? Like, so once it's capped, how long before it emerges? Okay, guys, let's do BMAT. All right, so how long is it a day? Huh? 41, well, mine's 9.
Okay.
All right, how long is it an egg? 3 days. 3 days. How long is it uncapped brood? Larvae. 6 days, doubles, right? So it goes, so then it doubles again. So how long is it capped? 6 times 2. 12. So it goes 3, 6, 12, right? That's the easy way to do the math. So the reason they're telling you to treat it quite often is because if basically after 12 days, all your capped brood is, all the brood that when you first treated is done. So some people say treat it every day for 12 days in a row, and you'll treat all the mites that are in your hive. That's a lot of vaporized acid thrown in your hive. But the formic acid, thymol, so the formic acid will get into capped, so that'll kill them, but you can't do that with supers on. So if your bees are behind, you don't have supers on, and it's not hot, you can run Formic. Thymol works really well when it's hot, but you can't run it with Superzone also. But both of those can be rough on queens when it's hot. They can make the bees very upset.
More than oxygen.
Oxalic acid, to me, they don't get upset.
So I got a vaporizer, 2 months ago. Because I thought I'd go after it a little bit more, on staying on top of it. So, anyway, Lorby said, that every 5 days for 6 weeks. So that's what I'm trying.
I mean, so you gotta remember the queen's laying, if you have a decent queen, 2,000 eggs a day. So you have 2,000 cells that are getting capped a day. If they're not, if they're ramping up, right? If they're not eating those eggs for protein, trying to cut back the numbers in the hive, then you're getting 2,000 capped a day. So if you're treating every 5 days, then you're missing 10,000 capped cells of Varroa.
Yeah, so I got one of these 8-bar things where you can pull it up the bottom board and have a look. So on the seat, little places where the lights just drop down alive. So they're there. So
Yeah, and if you treat with vapor, they're gonna all drop out. You'll see a whole bunch.
okay, what now your method that you use with Jason? Is that
The towels,
yeah,
our Swedish sponges.
yeah.
Yeah, look, it's pretty good, but you gotta have, like, you gotta go, Goodwill or someplace like that and get buy cheap kitchen stuff, because you don't want to use kitchen stuff. Or, well, if you wanna stay married, don't use kitchen stuff in your kitchen.
I use just a can in a double boiler situation. I do borrow the can from others.
I'm making it for like 30 hives, so I need a canning, I need a big vat. I'm using a big outdoor burner. The problem is when I got 1 or 2 hives, it's tough to scale it down to that. So this is why we have a club. Everybody get together and get a vat, and then everybody takes whatever they need.
So speak,
Because it's really cheap, and it works really well.
Can you pull your honey supers off for 15 minutes, vaporize them, let it vaporize for 15, 20 minutes, then put your honey supers back on? Or
Yes,
is there a time period? I don't know the time period, I'm just guessing 15 minutes.
sure, you could do that, and I want to say, you have to check the EPA, because they may have approved honey supers beyond with vaporized Oxalic.
Well, if you use the, you can't use the strips.
I think they have. They didn't used to have vapor approved with, just, the thing is with me is, if I've got honey supers on, that hive is booming, and I've got way too much cap brood for vapor to really do much.
so oxalic acid vapor is approved with honey super.
Okay.
So
I don't think it affects the taste.
there's oxalic acid in honey anyway. It's already there, so.
It's obvious, yeah.
It's not enough.
I don't do it. So if my hive's that booming, oxalic is not the right thing because I have too much cap root. Because 80% of your Varroa are in cap root. So you need to do a method that's gonna address those. Or otherwise you're only dropping 20%. You tried that hot guard much? I did try that 1 year and I had very bad luck with it. It did not work very well.
I didn't,
It was killing queens at version 2. I lost my queens and then they took it off the market. Because of that, then they've got another version 3 now.
I've used HopGuard 3 and in one hive, in a couple hives, it was great, other hives didn't work so good.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like anything else.
I do so if I catch a swarm, yeah, so if I catch a swarm, 9 days after I catch a swarm, I hit them with vaporized oxalic acid. Why 9 days? Because they don't have, yes, they don't have cap brood yet. So 9 days after I catch a swarm, vaporized oxalic acid, it should basically kill every single Varroa that's in that swarm. So if I do a split or anything like that, I'll wait to do the queen. I'll try and wait as many days, 12 days. So that all that cap root that's in, or well, it depends on what's in there. I guess what I make the nuke out of. But I'll try and wait till I have very low cap root, vaporized oxalic, then have the queen. Sorry, I didn't mean to take your word.
That's okay. I
You're
mean,
great.
we are gonna do a question and answer at the end, and just so you guys know, Mark over here is our former president. He's actually gone through the master beekeeping class in Montana. And since I was up here and, I can answer a lot of questions, but it's always good to have even more answers. They always say you ask 10 beekeepers a question, you're gonna get 12 different answers. Or 20 or 30. So the other thing we're gonna do today is with this up here, Tyler is gonna do a demonstration and a talk about adding additional boxes to your hive, adding a second brood box and adding a super. So we'll do that. Then after it's over, we'll open it up to a question and answer. Mark and I will answer the best we can. If anybody else has got input, feel free. It's gonna be just an open discussion until you guys run out of questions. I do have one other thing we need to ask. Normally July is our least attended meeting. In the past, we've made it kind of like a dessert potluck. What's your thoughts on, you want to do that for next month, or would you like just to postpone next month's meeting and move it and wait till August? Let everybody speak at
What's
once.
the date that it would be?
It's our normal meetings are always on the second Wednesday of the month at 6:30 here. So in the past, we've had the club has provided ice cream and other people have just brought in other stuff. We just come in, have dessert, chit chat, talk about bees. And then when everybody's had too much, they go home. So let me get a show of hands on how many people want to do a potluck. And how many people would like just to skip it?
Well,
I think we'll go ahead and do the potluck. That seems to be the majority, so plan on that. If you want to bring something, like the club will provide ice cream with the club. And then anything else you want to bring, we'll do ice cream and some drinks probably, so we have something to drink with it. And then whatever else you guys want to bring, we'll just do that next month and just have a chit chat, so. Go ahead. Gate. Oh, gate. Yeah, so apparently in the past, the gate out there, I know you guys noticed that the gate over here is closed. It's been open in the past because apparently it was broken. Well, now they've got it fixed and they're saying it closes at 5 o'clock. There's nothing we can do about it. It's gonna be closed. So other than having somebody go out there, we'll try to have somebody out there manipulating it to open it, but for the most part, most people are gonna have to park over on this side. So, and unfortunately, that's a very, very small parking lot. When we pack this room, parking might get interesting. So, okay, go ahead and turn it over to Tyler here and let him do his demonstration.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tyler Tobias. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Tyler Tobias. Hey, you close that door if that helps. So Jason just asked if I could do a demonstration for the club. He asked me to talk about when to add the second brood chamber and or honey supers. So depending where you're at, whether you're just starting and you just have your first nuke, or maybe you've been doing this a while, but you're still not sure when to add your honey super. So that's really the main topic. So for those of you that have just gotten your nuke only, you're a first time beekeeper, you're probably not sure what's going on. Jason had already talked to you about moving your nuke into your first brood chamber, the first deep, correct? Is anyone still running 5-frame nuke right now? Okay, cool. So inside your nuke, or excuse me, inside your honey super, and I'm gonna give a disclaimer here. My mind tends to work twice as fast as my mouth. And so sometimes I just say something to catch up to whatever my brain's thinking. Makes total sense to me, but it might confuse the hell out of you. I have thick skin, just say, what in the heck are you talking about? Just call me out on it, okay? And I'll go back. So anyway, your bottom box by now should be looking something similar to a pattern like this. The frames might be moved around a little bit, but for the most part, you should be fairly close to this. Basically, you've got in the center, brood, and it could be either capped brood or a mix of cap with open brood, meaning eggs, okay? And then if it was brand new and you were also drawing out the 5 additional frames, depending where they're at, you may have maybe even just a solid frame that just got done being drawn out on one side or both sides, and you'll notice all of a sudden that's just completely filled with eggs. And what happened was, before the foragers had a chance to fill those cells up with food sources, pollen or nectar, she got a chance to go ahead and lay the hatch in there. And that's exactly what you want. But sometimes the foragers do get ahead of the workers on the comb. So you got to be kind of cautious on that. The other thing is you should have probably at least one frame that's probably full of honey, at least on one side, if not both, or a combination of maybe some pollen and honey. That's predominantly that way. Now, some of your brood, don't get this confused. You may have almost all of it brood. Again, maybe capped or maybe a combination of capped and eggs. And then you might have just a very thin rainbow of pollen, and then another thin rainbow or even thinner, or maybe even just the upper corners of honey. That is still going to be considered a brood frame for this purpose, okay? And that's good, because a lot of queens are laying that way. Some queens will lay so much that it's from wall to wall, all 4 sides of brood. But typically, a lot of times you're going to see that probably 3/4 or more brood with the small arcs of pollen and honey. Okay, so that's what you're hoping to see in here. Now, once you have established that, it's time to consider adding your second box. So the other thing you're looking for is to make sure this box has roughly 70 to 80% of bees going on. Now, when you first open up your hive and you're looking at it straight down, you're going to be confused if you're going on a frame count of 70 to 80%, because your bees right now are always going to be up towards your top part of your frame, okay, your top bar of your frame. So the ideal thing is, if this is the front of the hive, you're going to stand in back and just kind of, you can still lift this up on your bottom board without it falling, but lift it up, and you're going to actually just do a frame count from the bottom side, and you'll see bees on both sides of the frame. And so if that is, you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., all the way across. If you're at 7 frames, you're at 70%. If you're running a 10-frame box, 8 frames, you're at 80%. So if you have already higher than 80%, you're behind, all right? And this late in the year, they can still swarm if they have nowhere else to go. That queen wants to stay laying eggs, so we got to help keep that process growing. So it's kind of like, I always say, think of it as a calf. And your job is make sure this calf is continuing to grow, right? It's the same thing. This hive is still a calf. We're trying to get it to a mature cow here at some point in time. So kind of a weird analogy, but that's kind of how you want to look at that. So what do we do to get this other box going? Because again, most of you, unless you've already have been doing this for a while, your second box, all 10 frames are going to be what? Blanks again, right? So you're right back to where you had started. So how do we get that going? Can we just lay that on here? Yes, but chance of them taking that, it's a hit and miss. All right. If they just finally have nowhere to go, they might start working. What we're going to do is we're going to give them an opportunity to establish this and recognize this as part of their house, part of their home, and to continue to grow and just kind of keep that natural process going. So what we're going to do, we're going to pull some frames out from the center of this other box. And as you're doing your inspection of your lower box, is that going to cause a problem? Going through here, I want you to think about this for a second. we're gonna want, what type of frames do we want to put from this box to the second box? Brood, what kind of brood? A lot of people say cap. Are the bees really working the cap once it's capped? They're not, right? So what you really want to do, if nothing else, and all you have is just one frame, you're trying to find that one frame that has eggs, because the bees have to work the eggs, all right? So we want to take a frame, if this is just all eggs, or if it's eggs and cat brood, that's fine, just as long as you have some eggs. Take at least one of those frames up here. So when you put that up on top, it's going to draw the bees from the lower box to the upper box to continue to feed and nourish these eggs to eventually to where it's going to be capped. All right. While you're doing that, you have the blanks on each side of that. Well, this one's capped. These bees are going to be saying, hey, this isn't right. Why is each side of this drawn frame, why are those sides blank? And it really will kind of drive them a little batty. So force them to start drawing the frame on each side of that. And then once that happens, then they draw to the next side. And so that will start expanding that brood chamber. So remember, the bees are always going to go center out. So now we're at 78%. We need to add the second box. We're going to get that started at center and out. And it's just a repeat process, okay? So you follow me? Yes.
So is there a minimum you pull up or just one frame or?
You want a minimum of one frame, all right? If you have, okay, now the reason I say that is if you start pulling too many frames from the bottom, you're going to be replacing those with the blanks that you have. Now you got blanks of blanks, all right? So if this was already drawn out and established with a brood cycle, you're trying to avoid splitting the brood cycle or the brood nest. So one, maybe two frames. That's all it's going to take, and they're going to get going again. Follow me?
So then you put them together and put the blanks on the outside, or you just put the blanks in?
Good question. Yep. So we move the one frame, okay? So what are we going to do? Let's go ahead and we're going to tighten up that brood, what we do have, and then where we're at here on one of these sides, you'll put in your blank. Not in the center of the brood, more at the pollen, that kind of situation. So ideally, space is kind of hard to do it this way here. Basically, frame 2 or 9. That's the ideal situation. All right. Now, on that note, just as a little tidbit here, as you're doing your inspection just on a single box, and you see most of that's drawn, but you have 2 wall frames or one of the wall frames just is not drawn, or especially on the one side that's hitting the wall. Okay, that's very common, on a new blank. So what can you do? If let's say this end one is drawn on this side, but it's still blank on the wall, push that over, they'll draw that side because they're already used to drawing it. But if this one's completely blank and they just won't go to that one, all right, take the one that is drawn, just reverse those. So have drawn frame, then your blank, and then your drawing. Follow me? Sound good? Why are we doing that? Again, we're forcing them to draw out that frame, all right? So part of the reason you want to keep this one full rather than swapping out all your blanks is to keep that one going, because the idea is we want this one to also match this as much as we can, all right? They're going to start doing the same thing, work that center, and they're going to start coming out. The other thing is, once that's established here a few weeks or a month or so, you're going to start looking at doing your hive inspection. When we're doing the inspection, what are we looking for? Primary thing. We got a queen and she's laying, right? We're queen right, okay? So do I want to look through all 20 frames every single time? Preferably not, right? So the easiest thing to do, now that this is on here, you know, again, in a month or two, or excuse me, a couple of weeks to a month, this whole thing may not actually be completely drawn yet. That's fine. It may take till the end of the season, depending where you're at and the forage that they have available to them right now. We're going into a dearth because of the high heats, so things are going to slow down a little bit. But anyway, so this is, let's just say this is so empty, but they drawn out to here. That's fine. So now I'm going to start doing my regular inspection from this frame, just like we would down here. But I'm going to look. Oh, okay. I've already seen eggs. That's as far as I need to go, right? So now it just makes it easier rather than looking, having to go down here. Are my blanks being drawn or not? Okay. You already know those are drawn because you only have to move up one here. It just keeps you from having to constantly take the box off and break the hive down even more. The more you break it down, the more you're messing with their home, the more you disturb them, chances of you hurting your queen, killing your queen go up greatly. And you don't want to disturb them. You want them to just keep going and building and eventually, hopefully, giving you honey. That's the goal, right? So again, from the nuke box, the goal from here, once you add the second box, is to get this ready to go over winter. So what should be happening right now is to continue to draw this out. Hopefully, there's enough workers to match to draw it and not so much foragers. Because what can happen, and I'm seeing it in my hive, I'm sure Mark's seeing it, Doug and some others, is you're getting honey bound and pollen bound. And what happens there is now the queen has no place to lay any eggs. So she's stuck. And all the foragers they're just bringing everything, a hodgepodge, and throwing it in there. Great that the frames are drawn, bad that we are not establishing our hatch, okay? The colony, in theory, over time, if it stays like that, is actually going to shrink because she can't lay the numbers that she needs to keep this going. So you got to watch that a little bit on this upper box because naturally this is where they're going to really start throwing their honey and getting ready for winter. And so if you're like real close to a alfalfa field or something like that, you might get that going faster than some other place maybe in town right now. If you're seeing that, all else, pull that complete, you know, if you got tons of honey, no place for the eggs, start pulling that honey out. If you can swap that out, maybe even freeze this, wait for later, or somehow get something established so that she has a place to continue to lay eggs, because you need that growth for the pollen. Make sense? All right. So then, when do we add the, at this point right here, because we're going into the hot, you know, people have asked me, well, do you still feed? You can, you know, Tracy uses a theory, feed it, and if they need it, they'll have it. That's fine, but also in this heat, if they're not using it, that sugar water can sour pretty quick too, and so you don't want that. So you're going to have to keep on top of it. But there's going to be less stuff for them to forage right now. So the feeding, if you are in a situation where you need to continue to draw new frames, the feeding might not be too bad of a thing to consider. Okay, you just have to play that out by case by case.
Stay on the sun.
It depends how you're feeding it. If it's directly in the sun and no shade, it can sour real quick. Within a day or two, I've seen it. You know what I mean? So
How about a frame?
I'm sorry.
How about a frame?
A frame feeder, you know, I just started using frame feeders. They're not directly in the sun. I do normally feed in the hive, but I use a quilt box with a bucket. same concept, but now I've gone to the frame. I've seen that last 2 or 3 weeks. It just depends. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. It might be so hot that they're not, or that they do want it, and then all of a sudden it backs off and something bloomed in your area, and they started going to that. They're gonna reject anything artificial. Always go natural first. And so maybe that resource dried up, and they're gonna go back to the sugar water. You know what I mean? And you won't even necessarily see that or know that. So you do kind of want to check that a little bit and kind of watch that. So at this point, if you are doing a frame feeder, put it up on top and not the bottom, okay, which naturally, the top is a food source anyway for them, so they're gonna get used to having that in there. And it's so much easier just to crack that top, look at your frame feeder. Oh yeah, I need to add more, or no, they're not doing anything with this or whatever. And you don't have to do anything more than that. Just look, put it right back.
Did you feed it 1-to-1?
1-to-1. Yep. The only time you're gonna change that is comes the fall. And as we get closer to those months, the presenters will talk about when to change it. What that time is. Yeah, keep it a 1-to-1.
Do you ever use one of the like stimulant mixes?
Like a Pro Speed or something like that. Yeah, you can. I don't do that straight. I know that Jason has done that. I don't know if you have, or if you've ever done it straight. But what I'll do is I'll make the sugar water, and they'll like Man Lake. I think it's the Pro Suite that they have. They have a formula on there on how you want to necessarily use that. And so I think, so I'll usually make like 5-gallon buckets at a time, and I think it's a half a cup to a cup or something like that. That I'll add to every 5 gallons. And just kind of helps out with that. And that actually will prolong from your sugar water souring and fermenting as well.
Is there any reason to be using foam patties this time of year?
I wouldn't use ball and patty right now. I mean,
I'd be surprised if they took it,
yeah,
but you could use, so another way to feed is you could use like they call them like sugar patties that have like low pollen before sugar. They'll keep longer than sugar water. But I mean, right now, unless you have a new hive that you're trying to get to draw, you shouldn't have to feed now.
yeah,
If you
that's what I
gotta
was gonna
feed
say.
now, then you got bigger problems. You gotta figure out what they need. So when he was talking about like the frames, like, do they have pollen? Do they have like nectar or honey? If they don't have one of those, if they don't have pollen, then they need pollen. They're looking to hand them out. You can't raise food without pollen. That's so
Hey, Mark, why don't you come up here so you're a little closer to the microphone for the people that are on Zoom?
Yeah, I want to make sure you understood that. This is again for that nuke that you're established and you're trying to grow it out. You still need these Everton frames to be drawn. That's where you would consider doing the sugar water. If your frames are already drawn, you don't want to do that, because that's the only purpose you're going to do the sugar water right now, is just to get those wax glands going again, or maintain those wax glands so that the blanks can be drawn out. Make sense?
Yeah, I mean, they're not gonna, so he's exactly right. So you can tell when the bees have wax glands, if you look in there and you've got that white wax, like right there, everybody knows what I'm talking about, like that fresh white wax. When they have that, you can put as many blank frames in as you can, and they'll draw them out super fast, within days probably. But if something happened, if that age group of bees, and I want to say it's like 18 to 24 or something like that is when they're peak wax production. You don't have that white wax and they're not drawing. Even doing this, they're probably not going to draw. You need that white wax, that right age class of bees, and a lot of them to draw out frames. So that would be, just look for that. I mean, and you know, adding a box to the other, a lot of that depends on the beekeeper completely and how often you go in them. Like if you're going in your bees all the time and you can catch it before they swarm, you can wait till they draw the whole box out. If it's me and I'm going in them like once a month, I'm gonna be proactive probably and give them more space, but I also have drawn comb that I can mix in there. So I can, entice them in other ways to get up to the top. And two other things I'll add is, so when you bring the frame up, I absolutely 100% agree. The frame that you do bring up here, I try and always have pollen and honey on that frame so that they're not having to go all the way down and back up to feed that frame. So I'm looking for a frame that's got very young brood, pollen, and honey, so that when you separate that out of the brood nest, they have everything they need right there to care for those bees. Because if you pull a frame up that doesn't have pollen and honey, they don't have anything to feed those bees. So the nurse bees are going to be panicked going down and trying to bring them up. And yeah, maybe that causes them to drop more combs so that they have those resources close, but I don't want to roll the dice like that. So that I just watch for that. And then the other thing I'll add, when he was talking about quick inspections, which I'm all about quick inspections. I definitely take all your frames. I love how he has it really tight. Like always keep all your frames super tight, because otherwise they'll draw out the frames to the right bee space. And if you have a frame space like this, next time you go in, the bee space will be here. You go to pull this out and you're going to roll a bunch of bees. I don't know about you, but once you start rolling bees, my bees do not like that. So if you want to go in with like no protection or minimal protection, you can do it on a hive like this where you don't roll bees. You start rolling bees, you're in trouble. Then the other thing I do, right, usually I'll break this frame out. So I'll go in and I try and center I'll leave a hive like this every time I leave it. When I open the hive, I get it up and I'll take this and I'll push this over. Now they draw this one out to bee space, so you can't push that over too much, but you can push it enough where you can break this frame loose and pull it up without rolling bees. I put that to the side, and then I don't go over like this because the brood's here. So I'll go right to the center. I skip all these, I'll break this, and I go right to the center because I'm just right. So one of the things I do, and he said it, is like before I even go in a hive, like, okay, what am I looking for? Right? Are you looking for one thing, two things? And then if you find it, what are you going to do? If you don't find it, what are you going to do? And I mean, typically he's right? I'm looking for eggs. Like I want to make sure I'm queen right. Okay, so this time of year, I'm worried about that because I've been introducing queens, they're swarming, all that stuff. So I have this plan, like when I go on the hive, I'm like, okay, like I need to figure out if it's queen right. As soon as it's queen right, at this time of year, unless I open it up and they're buzzing me, I'm done. And then I'll pick one hive and I'll say, okay, this hive I'm going to go in and I'll find the queen, and I want to find larvae that are just about to be capped, and I'm going to do a mite wash. So have a plan. Don't just go in your bees to go in your bees. Have a plan. And then so I'll break in the middle, and then this should have brood, whether it's capped brood, eggs, something like that. I go right for the middle because I want to spend, right? I can crack open this hive, I can take this out, I can look at this, I can see brood. I can be in and out of here in 2 minutes or less. And that's it. If they're calm, like when I open this, they're calm, I see brood, they're done. Do they need space? They need space to put a honey super on. If they don't, done. Next hive. That's it. Now, if I open it up and they start buzzing me, they're upset, and there's a roar, I'm probably not going to find brood because they're queenless. If I find brood, but they're roaring, is there any uncapped brood? Did they swarm and all of a sudden there hasn't been a queening here for 12 days or something, right? So I mean, have a plan and then try and stick to it. Or maybe, definitely, if they're hitting me, regardless of the queenlet or not, I'm doing a mite wash. Because if hives don't have mites, they are, like my hives, are babies. And I used to have hives that were like, they were not babies. And everybody's like, oh, strong hives, they produce lots of honey. If I have a strong hive that produces a lot of honey that's trying to sting me, you can have it. I don't want that. I want to be able to like go in my hive in 5 minutes and not get stung, not have to wear gloves, wear just a veil, a couple puffs of smoke, and that's it. If they're coming out after me, they probably have mites or queenless.
All right, so for those of you that have this already drawn out, now you gotta consider what's the next step? A honey super, right? So how many bees need to be in the colony to establish this, the next box? 70 to 80%. It's the same cycle. Follow me? So anytime that your hive now is still at 70 to 80%. So this box here and this box here should be 70 to 80%. All right. So again, if you have some blanks down here, you want to make sure those are drawn and the ones up here are drawn. So it just depends on how you've arranged between the two boxes. All right. Again, I like to, if this is full, I like to try and keep this as full already. Rather than it going straight up, I want it to expand, then expand, expand. Follow me? And that's the concept of doing it this way to make that a big brood chamber. So when you go to the honey super, the next thing you got to consider is, well, first of all, you're not going to be using any sugar water from that point on. All right, you don't want to use sugar water with your honey supers. You just let them draw it out. So the question always is, and I'm going to tell you right now, the answer is, it's the beekeeper's choice. It's not somebody else telling you what to do or not to do. But you have to consider, am I going to use a queen excluder or not use a queen excluder? All right. So if you're going to use one, that's the time you go ahead and put it on top of your second box. And then you're going to put your honey super on top of the excluder. We've confirmed our queen is down here. We do not want her up here. Been there, done that, where somehow I inadvertently switched my honey box to a brood box, and all of a sudden this is, you know, they're freaking out because they don't have a queen. It does happen, but that's what we're trying to avoid. So this can be a great tool, especially if you're new and you're not following the logic of where the queen is and not, that type of a thing. Some people choose not to use the queen excluder at all, matter of preference. And they'll go ahead and put that super on here, the honey super. Keep in mind, if you got a really strong hive, a really just phenomenal queen, it's not uncommon at all that she will also start to lay in that first honey super. And so the super, most of us use a medium super rather than a deep super for your honey. Commercial guys will use all deeps all the way up and down. All right. This deep, if that's what you choose to do, and you don't have heavy equipment other than, you know, elbow grease, keep in mind, 10 frames drawn, you're talking probably about 120 pounds. It is heavy. All right. So most of us will use a medium just because of weight, but that medium, again, if you're not using the queen excluder, I just want you to be prepared that what you might see, and it's common, is that she'll come in and lay maybe about a third to halfway up on that honey super and following the same cycle. She'll probably start in the center and then she'll carry out to so far as she wants. But that brood nest is kind of like a ball shape. So, you know, the outer frames aren't going to be as much brood in there. But if you're trying to get that to be perfect honey, I would consider doing the excluder until that one's established. Once that's completely capped from top to bottom on the frame, all the way across, she will not skip a box to lay into the next honey super. Follow me? So you pull that excluder out, place that completely capped honey super back on here without the excluder, put your second honey box on, and just keep them going. Why is that important? This does hinder the rest of the bees, not just the queen, but it does hinder those bees, the flow of that a little bit as well. If you get in and out of here, it does slow them down. So It's a trade-off, kind of back and forth, and you're the only one that's gonna be able to make that decision. How do I want to use that tool?
Is plastic better than metal, or metal better than plastic, or?
Again, that's gonna be the beekeeper's choice. My preferred method is always the metal, because what's gonna happen, no matter metal or plastic, is you're gonna have a bunch of wax filled up in here. And then on the sides, they're gonna fill that with propolis as well, because they're trying to glue and seal and tack everything down. So you're gonna have all that. So once you have that plastic, that's a real pain in the derriere to get all that wax off, okay? With a metal, I can just take my propane torch and I just hit that, and that wax is just gonna fall up my tool, and I'm ready to put it back on that hive or any other hive, you know what I mean? I can keep going, and this is gonna last you years and years and years on a metal. So that's my preferred choice. I've heard some people using a plastic one, and when they're done, they put it in the freezer, and then they try and, it's more brittle, so they try to kind of crack the wax off a little bit, and I guess they have success that way. Most of the time, if you bought a starter kit, that's what you got, was a plastic one, and they're just gonna throw stuff at you, as we first start, we don't know really what's the right equipment or not to get or to get. So you just get that kit and it comes with that, right? So no harm, no foul. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's wrong, but for me, I want to keep reusing this. It's just easier for me to recycle that by the method I just got done explaining. So I don't know if that helps you or not.
Explain again why she stopped laying, like you said that the fourth one she would go up to.
Because there's a breakage of brood, all right? So let's just say this is your top box and this is your honey super. Follow me? Okay. So now this whole thing is capped with honey to include all the way down to the bottom of these frames, all 10 frames. That's how the goal is for your honey super. She's not gonna climb all the way up, skip this box, and then start laying in the next box because of the break here. She doesn't ladder all the way up there. She doesn't climb up there. Does that make sense? So that box will naturally stop that brood break for you, all right? So once you have that established, if that's what you're looking for.
Ever do 3 deeps and then super? Like for brood?
If you got a real good colony, yeah, you'll hear some beekeepers that do that. I don't know if they do that on every hive. I think it's kind of a case-by-case scenario, depending on, and this queen is just rocking it, and I want the bees rather than the honey. And so they'll take advantage of that particular queen in hive and go for a third one. Usually what they'll end up doing is going ahead and saps that pretty strong, and then as the season goes on, they'll pull that as a split, and they've already got a deep established form on the next hive rather than going by a nuke. Because in the fall, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but the fall, that colony is going to decrease. So wouldn't be able to maintain 3 deeps going into winter. Is that
Mathematically, you need 2 queens in there to lay that many eggs.
right? And it's not that often you hear of running 3 deeps as a as a brood chamber, all right? But if you have that, rock on. I mean, that's a great hive. So, yeah.
Are you checking the bottom box before you add the honey super, or just the second?
Oh, okay, so so if this is all hive, the second box, excuse me, if this is all drawn and this is drawn, you've got to give them room, right? So the room is another box. I want that box to be honey. That's the logic behind that. So once you've established, you've done your inspection here, you know she's queen right. If you also have something else to do, a mite wash or whatever, at the end of it all, you're going to say, all right, I got to add that second box. And you're going to go ahead and just add that right on there. Now, your next inspection, if you want to get in there and check on her again, what happens? You got to take that honey super off and then start working the brood chamber, meaning both boxes, okay? Follow me? And if you're there, this is where you gotta be really thinking. You can't just take that honey super off, put it off to the side. And let's say, again, this is your top box, and you've done your inspection. I don't see her, I need to get in that bottom box. And then you lay that on top of your honey super. That's, you're causing yourself trouble there. Because potentially, she's gonna come down from this box into here. And then now she's in your honey super without your knowledge. If you do that, and you are using a queen excluder, all right, put your honey super down to where you normally would do that. Then again, use your excluder, but you're putting it on top of the honey super momentarily before you put that top brood box. Everyone follow what I just did? Okay, that way if she does want to travel down, she's not going to go into your honey box. All right, like I said, I've made that mistake, so just telling you. We'll go back 2 weeks later, I'm like, how come I'm not seeing any brood? It's all up here. Yeah, Fuchsia really up. Fuchsia pretty bad. Any questions? There's Mud.
Just a quick one,
Yeah.
the entrance reducer,
Okay.
when do you just completely take that out?
Again, I guess that would be, I'm gonna leave that up to the beekeeper. Personally, I don't like running it completely open, even in the 105 degree weather. I do not like doing that. You're leaving, and different beekeeper could tell you something else, that's fine. But in my opinion, you're leaving that too exposed, because in between your hive inspections, where you're doing that once a week, once every other week, once a month, whatever, things can happen so fast in here without your knowledge, all right? And let's just say that colony was decreasing, but you just happened to do your last inspection at a time that you thought was still doing well, all right? And now it's dwindling down. Robbing season is coming up. Actually, it's kind of starting to take place. So what's going to happen is, as this colony is getting weaker, some other colony that's stronger, because the bees are great robbers, they're going to start coming in here, and you left the wide open door for them to just come in and do whatever they want, all right? So if you leave that to, the 4-inch roughly, kind of that size, that reduces the entrance for those guard bees to take guard. And so they keep all the robber bees and any other pest out. Make sense?
Yeah.
There's still enough ventilation going through there, and you'll be fine. All right? Yep. Yep. So again, that's my opinion. I don't know if you guys have something different.
I agree. 100%.
I'm running commercial pallets, and so I don't have an inch. It's built into the pallet, and so it's always the same size all year.
Right? Good question. Yeah. Anything else?
How high can you reach?
As many as they'll give you. So, so there's challenges to everything. I'm vertically challenged, right? And I run my hives up a little bit. But at some point in time, you get to a point where it's just no longer safe. I think it was my second, maybe third year, I had this just phenomenal queen. And just because it looked cool, I just kept on adding supers, you know what I mean? And I'm like, man, look how tall that tower is, and what a pain in the butt and unsafe it was when it came to harvest time. And I had to get a ladder, and you try to take a honey super off a ladder, carrying, balancing your weight and making sure you're not going to break your neck. I'll never do that again. So it just depends on how high you can go. I've got a little bit of a shoulder injury as well. So, I watch out for that. I do have a machine that helps me a little bit as well. But I probably will go no more than 3 high without me starting to rotate or checkerboard my honey frames. And that's a total different subject, but that's something you can do. And it helps keep that honey chamber to a reasonable working limit. Does that make sense?
For me, the amount of honey supers is like, when you take it off, you either have to put it somewhere where it's not gonna get raw, or you need to extract it. Do I wanna just pull that off and extract one box and get all that equipment dirty? Or do I wanna wait till I've got 2, 3, 4? So another option, what he was talking about on the hydrogen, talk to different beekeepers, get different opinions. He was saying, you go and add your honey, you get your brood, you add your honey super, and then you fill this one up. And he said, put another box on top. Well, another opinion that's out there is now they have to run from here all the way through this box, and then they come up here. I've seen other beekeepers do it. What they'll do is it's called gut supering. So instead of putting the new box here, this box now becomes on the top, and you put your box here. So they now only have to come through this far, and then they just finish this one off. But then again, you're back to the question of what are you doing with this? So that's just another option.
But that wet super, is that beneficial or not beneficial?
So wet.
Wet, like
Yeah.
if you spun it or,
Well, you don't, they will, if it's not capped, that means the bees think there's too much moisture in it. And if you spin out one too many that are uncapped, then you need to really watch your moisture level, because the next thing you know, instead of having honey, you have mead. So
the bees will know. Again, one of the wonderful things about bees, right? There's a great bunch of things about them, but they know exactly what the water content is, the percentage rather, of that honey frame. And so they're gonna sit there and fan to dehydrate that. So it's at least 17, usually around 17%, give or take a little bit. 17% is the common number. They'll know it's that. How they know it, I don't know. And bam, they cap it. So if you got capped, you know you're at 17% or less. You can buy the, I forget exactly. Yes, thank you. And you can buy those, and you can get a real cheapie that is kind of hard to work, or a real expensive digital one, which is what I got, and it'll tell you exactly what it is. Yeah, the moisture content. Here in the valley, because we don't have a whole lot of humidity, almost year after year after year, my capped honey is usually around 14–15%. So you're well. They say anything over 17%, it's going to ferment and potentially sour. So like I was saying, it would be used for mead, if that's what you want, I guess. But
I've never had uncapped that's over 17%. Like even in the fall, by the time I'm ready to harvest honey, like I've never even had uncapped. I'll test it, but I've never even had. So it's cured. They just haven't filled up the cells yet. Is typically what I see.
to cap it.
Yeah, I might have had a little more, but last year I had someone capped that was showing 21.
Then it also okay, so if you have a frame of 21%, but the rest of your honey is at 13%, and you spin that out with other gallons of honey,
It's going to bring it.
you're fine. It's just you can't have a gallon of wet honey that's going to turn to mead unless you want mead. And then
Yeah, because so you're considering it's your overall.
so a couple
Your
uncapped
overall
frames when you're
batch.
spinning are fine, but
Yeah.
a whole bunch you need to get a hydrometer and make sure you're not going to have fermented honey.
And when later this year, we'll be doing a talk about, extracting the honey, and I'll bring in, I've got one of the cheaper ones where you can actually, you look through it. It's called the Brix meter. You put a drop of honey on it. It's a prism. You put a drop of honey on it and you look through it. And it basically, you see a line in there that tells you how deep, how dry it is. So we'll bring that in and let everybody take a look at it and see that kind of stuff. And we'll get ready to do the honey extraction demos.
Now, just again, a side note, for those of you that started with the nuke, if you're able to get the honey super on there, great. Well, I always tell everybody that particular nuke, don't expect that honey super to get on the first year. If it happens, it's gravy, all right? But the goal is that the 2 boxes, the brood chamber is established to overwinter. That's the goal, all right? Not for us to have honey that first year. Because if we take their honey, they're not gonna overwinter. You're gonna start all over again next year.
Anything in the brood chamber, that belongs in queens.
Exactly.
And if, once you go above it, that's when we can start.
Now,
60 to 80 pounds. They need 60 to 80 pounds to overwinter in the Grand Valley.
so if you get to that point and you have the honey super on a new nuke, okay, it's established here, now it's time to do that honey super. But it's now, let's say, mid-July to August, and you're like, I know I'm not gonna have enough time, so do I or do I not? If that is an undrawn honey super, in my opinion, I would put it on. Not expecting honey, but what I want is whatever time of I have left of the season, I want to go ahead and use those bees, the volume of bees, to start drawing out that honey super so it's prepared and ready for next year. Follow me? Okay. Some people don't agree with that and they would just keep it this way. But again, if this colony is so big and there's no room, you're causing more problems. You're setting that hive backwards. So even adding that late in the season, you still gave them some room to work. All right, gave them something to do. That's it. You already covered the mites thing, and I was going to go over as well, so we're good. So unless there's any other questions.
For checking for mites, is that with the powdered sugar and you roll it? Is that my understanding?
So the powder sugar is an actual treatment. That's not actually doing your mite count. All
No,
right.
you can do a sugar roll.
You can do.
Oh, yeah, I don't do it.
No, yeah, you can do a sugar roll. It's not as effective as sacrificing 300 bees. But I mean, I understand everybody's reluctance to kill 300 bees, but killing 300 bees out of 40,000 to save the whole hive. I mean, those bees would gladly give their life sting to save the whole hive.
So how do you do a mite check?
Alcohol, 90% alcohol, isopropyl.
And you
Oh,
put
so
them in there? you-
Yeah,
Mite
so,
check?
so what you have, you have a mite check container that you can buy using Amazon or wherever else.
or make them.
Or you can make them, all right? The easiest thing though is just to buy one of those for now, but like everything's going up crazy out of price, right? So you're going to, you need 300 bees. So what you want to do is find a tub and roughly maybe the size of this or like a shoebox size tub. And then you're going to want a half a cup, measuring cup. And then you can use rubbing alcohol, all right? There's also other methods that you can use. If you don't want to use rubbing alcohol, you can use a Dawn dish soap and water, and there's a recipe on that. Again, Randy Oliver with scientificbeekeeping.org. He explains all that to you well. But anyway, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to find your frame. The ideal frame is to find one with that they're working the eggs on there, okay? Or at least the cat food, all right? However, if you're not used to finding your queen, establishing that, you could inadvertently kill your queen by doing a mite wash, all right? So the preferred method again is that way. Randy Oliver, if you read his stuff, he does tell you that you can actually, for a safer purpose, go all the way to the end and use a completely like a pollen frame or maybe a partial pollen honey frame. Your mite count might be just slightly off or not have as many bees, but it is a safer option. And he addresses that in his literature. But anyway, so what you're going to end up doing is you're going to pre-fill that mite wash container there's going to be a line there for 300 mark with your rubbing alcohol. You're going to make sure your queen is not on here and look and look and look and look and look and look. All right. And then once you're happy with that, then actually I'd put the container usually over the hive itself. And then you're just gonna shake those bees off into that container. And then they're gonna be sassy, they're gonna fly around, a bunch of them are, let them settle for a little bit. Now you have that, your container, and you can now look around a little bit and see if you find your queen. Sometimes it's a little bit easier, especially if you have a lighter color rubber toad or something like that, to look at all those. Okay, I'm still comfortable, there's no queen there. What I'll do is I'll just pick up, like if this was a toad or something, I pick it up and I just kind of tap it all down to one corner. And it's a real quick process, so you're trying to grab those bees. Get them all in the one corner of that tote, use your measuring cup, scoop up the bees, put them in the mite wash container, cover it up, and then you just sit there and agitate it for about a couple of minutes or so. I think it's 2 or 3 minutes. And then you're gonna lift that up, and there's a basket in there that's gonna hold the bees, all right? So there's a gap between the basket and the bottom of that container. And then you'll see them kind of just swirl and float down. And then that's where you're going to manually count the mites. Now, sometimes there's debris in there too that might confuse you. The mite's going to be round in shape, kind of like the size of the pen of an ink pen. Okay, so kind of like that dot. That's about the size of that mite. And eventually you'll recognize them a lot easier. But at first you're like, am I looking at a mite or am I looking at some type of debris or whatnot? And then you're just going to manually count those as whatever fell to the bottom there. And if you are 1 or 2, you're okay. They say 3 or more, you need to for sure treat that high. All right. And especially if you start getting into the 8, 9, 10, 14s, you're in trouble. And reach out to someone in the club that knows how to really help try to get that under control. Now keep in mind what's happening. I've already talked about, each cycle this goes through. So there was 1 mite that went in there, it was capped, all right, 5 come out. That's now in your hive. Next cycle, those 5 now found additional cells. So now you got 5 cells they went in, all right, and 5 more are going to come out. So now you got 25. Just keep doing the math over and over per cycle. So what's going to happen towards the end of August, right? That's when your mite loads are just, they've imploded. It's just, they're killing. And these bees are upset. Think about if something was pestering you 24/7, you'd be a little upset too and want to get out of there, right? You'd want to leave. So that's what's happening. So that's why we're trying to control them now through the whole season. So when we get to the end of the season, when we know for sure the mite load is expected to be at its peak, we're trying to already hopefully be at that threshold that we're safe. Make sense? Right? So it's a lot of preventative now for here in 2 months.
Think about the mite looks tiny to us, but think about that to the size of the bee. Imagine having something the size of your fist stuck on your body and you're carrying that around constantly.
It's eating your liver.
Yeah, and it's eating your liver.
The mice will completely destroy your hive. It will. A lot of people say, oh, it's survival of the fittest. Again, it's each beekeeper's own way of doing things, but I will go toe to toe to argue with that I don't think it's survival of the fittest. I do think you need to be treating certain things, and the mites for sure is one of them you need to treat. So, yes.
So if the mite count is like 1 or 2, when do you do it again?
So the
Yeah.
mite count totally depends for me on the time of the year. Like a one or two in August or September is totally fine. A 1 or 2 right now is I'm treating. So it really depends on what the hive's doing, like where they're at in the amount of brood that they're rearing, and like what that trajectory is.
I know you said you were gonna put towels on. How long will they be on then before you change them out?
Yeah. There's a whole thing, that's a whole nother deal, but if you do the oxalic towels, they're sweet, does anybody know what Swedish sponges are? Yeah. Yeah, they're,
Yeah,
like- I mean, like. this
If
size,
I
you
can
cut them into
interrupt real quick
strips.
on that. So, Jason did say anyone that did buy a new from him this year, and I don't know who all that was, so I'm gonna ask it just be the honor system. Come up and talk to me afterwards, because he has some pre-made for you that I need to give you. But these are what they look like, all right? And all you're gonna do is you're gonna have 4 of these, and you're gonna, in between the 2 boxes, put 4 towels, 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sense? Right across those. And they'll walk across them like everything else.
I usually stagger them kind of, because they won't go all the way across. So I usually do kind of one toward this side, one toward this side, one toward this side. And then
Sure.
make sure you wear gloves because it is oxalic acid. And then when you also don't rub your face or anything, so like treat it like acid. When you put that on, and then like basically I keep them in the hive until they're dry. So the reason they use Swedish sponges is they just hold that moisture for a really long time. In our environment, they do dry out, but what are bees constantly doing to keep the temperature in here? How do they keep temperature? Fanning water, yeah, right. So they have their own little swamp cooler system going. So I have actually had these last like months.
Yeah. 2-3 months for sure, I would say. Yeah.
And then when you do inspect and
Do they
you're,
work?
you know,
Oh, yeah.
oh, they were, oh,
Yeah.
phenomenal.
To me, that's a game
So
changer right there.
what's happening with the strips is that the bees are walking across them and getting the oxalic on them, and then as they go all over the hive, they spread the oxalic all over the hive. The mites, their legs melt when they hit this stuff. So they're just getting little trails and.
I've heard the mites have to get it on their feet.
Maybe, I don't know, these work.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I'm seeing 1s and 2s. I'll put these on my hives and within 30 days, I'll have 0s again.
Can you put them on without having any mites? Like if you do a check and you don't have any mites. can
That's up to you,
still
you're the
take-
beekeeper.
You're the beekeeper? I would, but
I mean, would you take antibiotics? You were sick? I mean,
that's a good point. but-
so part of the reason there's virulent, does everybody know what virulent is? So, you ever hear like super bacteria in like hospitals, right? They're immune, the antibiotics can't treat them, right? They're virulent. So the reason they develop virulent is they're microdosed, you know, for whatever reason they were microdosed and they developed a resistance. So if you're treating a hive that doesn't have a problem, you have the potential to, you know, to microdose and create virulent strains. So I would avoid that. I do whitewash, and whitewash is really interesting. I mean, yes, you're killing 300 bees. A hive like this should have like 40,000, 60,000 plus bees, two deeps. 300 bees is not a lot. And then, you know, so everybody's got something different. I look for brood that's just about to be capped because the mites want to jump in the brood that's just before it's capped. And then when it's capped, they can go raise their babies and not be pestered, right? So that's what I look for. You shake that in. Then once it's in like the Tupperware, I'll take the Tupperware and bounce it a couple times because you want all the field bees to leave, right? Because the mites are typically on the nurse bees, and the nurse bees won't fly away. Nurse bees also really don't sting much. I don't use gloves when I do that. The nurse bees are all mellow. You scoop them out. You put them in, you stir it around. Yeah, it's kind of sad. You look for mites, and then whoop, off they go. Bee heaven. They did their job. They sacrificed for the hive. But yeah, I mean, and I do it by yard, right? So if I do, you know, a mite wash and I see, I'll do probably 2 hives in the yard. I don't wash every single one. So that makes me feel a little better because I'm not killing, you know, a couple thousand bees in the yard. But yeah, so you know, I can understand if you, right, when I first started, I had like 2 hives. Yeah, I would not have wanted to kill 300 bees, but now knowing what I know, it's totally worth it. Because your whole hive will die if you have mites.
So if you have 2 hives, you only check one. And assume that it's.
I would check one and I would check the weakest one. Because if it's weaker than the other, it'll probably have mites.
Yeah, two hives, I mean, you're saying 300 bees. Yeah. Depends on your might watch too, right? If you get none on the-
Well, so I mean, if I did a mite wash, if I had 2 hives and I did a mite wash and I got 0 and both hives were calm and not bothering me, I'd be happy. Like, okay, good, I don't need to treat. If I did a mite wash in a hive and I got like 1 and I was like, nah, I don't really know if I need to treat, I might do a mite wash in the other. If I got like, honestly, I have a really low threshold. If I get like 2 mites, kill them, like just treat. Especially this time of year. Especially this time of year, because you should have a lot of brood in there. They should be doing really well right now.
So one of the questions that popped up here on Zoom was, can you treat with honey superzone? And the answer to that one is it depends on what you're using. Oxalic acid, yes, it's approved. Formic acid, not so much. I think the only other one I know of that's approved is hot crop. Other than that, there aren't any other mite treatments that are approved.
Randy Oliver has a really good chart of like, again, we keep quoting Randy Oliver. There's other sites out there as well, or books. I have a bunch of books there. They have different treatment methods in kind of a similar table, but you know, different. So you know the different treatments, right? And then you know, can you treat with honey supers on? And you know, what are the limitations? Can you treat in the heat? Can you treat in the fall? Should you treat in the spring? I mean, there's kind of like it's not really a decision matrix, but it's kind of a decision chart, I guess, to help guide beekeepers to what you want to do. But yeah, make sure that it's approved for what you're doing and follow the label. I'm a male. I hate reading directions or read directions.
I got a question, just a bit off the subject here, but Man Lake, I saw, is advertising these vaccinated bees for foul brood. Have you seen that? Because I think it's extremely dangerous. Because what you're gonna have,
American or European?
huh?
American foul brood or European? I mean, it must be European foul brood.
No, I think it's American. I'm sure it's American, but, and you're gonna have, every hive is gonna be 100,000 typhoid Marys. It'll be asymptomatic, but they're gonna get into a hive that's got foul brood and spread it everywhere. It could devastate beekeeping in the country. I think, I mean, tell me where I'm wrong. But foul broods spread with spores. Okay, they get those spores
Well,
on,
it's
but what controls foul brood is the hive dies. Okay, it's a fatal thing. It doesn't happen that often, but that hive dies. Okay, and that's what controls it. But if you get asymptomatic bees that don't die, but they spread that spore to everybody, I just think it's a horrible, horrible thing that they're doing. And you know, they're saying, oh, well, the vaccine or whatever it is doesn't spread foul brood. No, but the bees are asymptomatic, and when they go into a hive that's got it, they're going to spread it everywhere. And you could wipe out every wild colony in the country. You could eliminate bees in 2 years with something like that.
American foul brood is extremely rare, but if you have that, you need to burn your hives.
Right, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
But,
so I
but,
think they're being
with
treated
this,
for European foul.
when they get into it, all they got in is one hive and they're asymptomatic, and they just spread those spores everywhere.
Yeah, so they're pre-treating with terrasamine. It says here that terrasamine is the only product that's approved for European foul brood treatment.
Well, that was an antibiotic, right?
Yeah, so I don't know what.
No, this is no advertisement on Man Lake. And Jason was talking about it. He thought it was good. And I think it would be the death of beekeeping. You're taking a problem that's very minor, right? I mean, you know, it's around, but it's very minor. It doesn't have any major problems. But you're gonna spread that to every hive. You'd spread it to every hive in the valley in 2 years.
I think at this point, it's just do your research and make your decision, because we don't have.
Well,
enough
it's
information on
not my decision. If they spread it, everybody's out. That's the problem. I mean, tell me where I'm wrong on that.
it. We don't have enough information on
Yeah,
that. so.
I couldn't comment on that. I mean, you bring a good point, but I don't have enough background or read enough to give an opinion.
I think it's a terrific threat to beekeeping, maybe the biggest threat ever.
Got a question back there in the back?
Yeah, we've got two nukes, got them set up. They're bringing in pollen like crazy. I mean, they are just like. We've got a bunch of plants, flowers, and stuff we planted about.
Yeah.
They about 200 meters from our house, and I've got a vegetable garden thing going on. We're not seeing any of them near those flowers.
So
Are they gonna eventually get out of there? I mean, I'm sure
They,
they will.
they may not hit your flowers because the scout bees may have found a stronger resource somewhere else.
Okay.
That colony agrees, and so they're gonna go to the strongest
Okay.
resource first. And they'll basically deplete that, and then the other scout bees, you know, while they're working that, the other scout bees are going around. And then it might get to the point where they're like, yep, let's go to these ones now, you know what I mean?
So, I mean, if there is something there, just like.
they do specialize, so once they go out, they're gonna be a pollen gatherer, they're gonna be a nectar gatherer, they're gonna be a water gatherer.
Okay.
And then they'll even specialize, even they like, I'm a pollen off of a clover, and they're gonna hit that till it's gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you probably see some, just probably not as many as you're hoping, right?
Yeah, I
Right.
want to be, I want my garden too.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to pollinate my garden.
I could almost guarantee you they are pollinating the garden,
But
but
I just not seeing.
you're just not seeing what you're in your vision, you know what I mean? But again, if there's another stronger resource, you know, like in a pollen somewhere, we're gonna go to that first.
Yeah, you gotta think a bit about it from the bees perspective. Number one, they're going to the highest chloritic nectar source, right? And there has to be a lot of it. Like, if you have like a little flower bed and there's 40,000 bees, like your little garden is probably not on their radar. So they'll probably just skip it over. And then for, you know, it's also, so you need a pretty big, either really good source or a pretty big source to attract them. Because I've had the same thing. I have a vegetable garden and I see more wasps in there than I see honeybees.
The wasps are everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, the wasps are everywhere, but they're still pollinating. So you got pollinators, just not the bees. The bees found something else.
Now they're getting somewhere. They're low.
They come in loaded.
And also, so this time of day too, so like with these hot days, plants are shutting off like the nectar with this heat.
Yeah.
Unless, I mean, right now it's the end of like kind of the Russian olive bloom. So those guys will probably nectar all day because they're by water. You know, they'll provide nectar, but that stuff's, I don't know who's tasted Russian olive honey, but no thanks. But it's really good for the bees. It's really, it's kind of they're invasive and I hate Russian olive, but the bees love it and it's really good to boost them this time of year.
I think yellow sweet clover also blooms at the top,
Yeah,
and it'll provide nectar, but
only in the morning though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is also invasive.
One more thing before I forget. Some people had asked me at the Ice for Heroes meeting, put these sponges on top of the second, you know, in between the second brood chamber and the honey. And the answer to that is no. Only between the two brood chamber boxes. All right.
You want the nurse bees to walk over these. That's why you're doing it by the brood. because the nurse bees are the ones that the mites are gonna jump on, because the nurse bees are going by the brood that's just about to be capped. That is the mite target, capped brood. I mean, there's like pictures, they have these cameras in the hive, and literally like the bees will emerge and these 5 mites come out, and they will literally jump on a bee, the bee will walk by a cell that's just about to be capped, and they just jump right in. I mean, they don't want to hang out in the hive, they just want to produce more mites.
Any other questions? We could even jump off of mites. Go ahead. So the question is, because it was kind of hard to hear for those people on Zoom, any problem with using last year's frame? Depends on how dark it is. If it's super dark, then you want, the wax is gonna hold on to the pesticides, because most of the pesticides are, what is
You want to try and recycle like about 3 years, 5 years max.
What is it called, the wax loving? Lipophilia,
Yeah, I
lipo
forget.
something. There's a scientific name for it, that
3
basically.
to 5 years,
Just-
you want to cycle your frames out. And if you bought a nuke, I hate to break it to you, but that's how beekeepers like me recycle frames. Trade secret, pro tip.
So, a lot of people will do a rotation, depending on whether you do a 3 or 5 year, but say you're on a 5 year, at the beginning of the season, find your 2 worst frames, yank them out, throw them, put a new foundation, and let them go.
And these blank frames are great for a Sharpie to write the year on it, and then Or you can just, because a brood flame will be really dark, right? If you have a gray queen and they do a whole bunch of cycles of brood, each time they do that, they create that cocoon, right? Because they're doing metamorphosis, so they're going from, right, the larvae to the bee. It's kind of like a butterfly, except it's a bee. And so they'll do layer after layer of layer. That brood frame gets really dark with all those layers. But that frame might only be a year old. It just might have had, I don't know, every 21 days, right? So, I mean, they need to clean it. So maybe every 30 days, it's going through a cycle. So you can get 4 or 5 cycles.
Maybe just scrape that stuff off.
Well, that's a whole beekeeper thing. I don't. So after I have a frame that's X number of years old or I'm recycling, I pop this out, the foundation out, and put new foundation in. And then take these frames are great. You did a great job. Like, look at how heavy that wax is. You buy frames from Man Lake, they don't have enough wax on there. Like, take wax and rub the wax on there. Like all that fur comb. So when you open up your hive, you've got like they glued the top down and you've got that wax. Scrape that off, put it in a bucket, put it in a solar melter, and make those gold bars, and then rub your frame down or melt your frame, run it with a paint roller, whatever. Wax, like put lots of wax on your frames. Otherwise you get wonky comb and everything else. And if you're a new beekeeper, their bees are going to draw what they want to draw. So if they want to draw drone, right, these are sized for worker brood, and it's natural. They want some males in there so they can kick them out in the fall. The drone size, the drone bees are bigger. They're going to draw like that bigger comb in here. So you're going to get some wonkiness on the comb. They'll draw a lot of them down here, right, kind of on the bottom of the frame. But you'll get these, like if you space them, if you put 2 frames in and they're not like this, and you go like this, they'll literally, I have girls that when I forget to push the frames, they'll draw, instead of drawing here, they'll draw perpendicular to the frames. They're like, no, we want to do this. So, and then, I mean, you guys can decide what to do. I scrape it off. Sorry. Try again. Yeah. Usually, actually, if they start doing the wonky comb on a frame, I find I just have to take the whole frame out and put a new frame in and get them to draw it right. And then they probably don't either, because they're bees.
There's lots and lots of books about beekeeping, and unfortunately, the bees haven't read the book.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess, this is a great little book, like you saw me when he was talking about foul brood. I don't encourage, luckily, I don't encounter enough diseases or problems in hives that I have to have a book to look them up. This is a great little kind of like picture book, because I'm a visual person. It just tells you about the disease and how to treat it. This is kind of a cool little like go-to, right? Because I have a plan when I go in a hive, right? Hey, I'm just gonna look for, brood, and I have, and especially in the spring when they're weak or whatever, pull it out and looked and like, oh my gosh, like that brood does not look healthy, or what's going on, smells or whatever. At that point, I pull out, the whole game plan changes, right? Go in, if I'm gonna find this, I do this, if I find this, I do this, and I find something else. Like, okay, like I need to figure out what's going on. This helps.
What's the title of that book?
Diagnosis and Treatment of Common Honeybee Diseases by Ben Salmon and Rob Snyder.
Pretty good.
I don't remember. Van Lake, Amazon. Yeah, I've got a whole library of books because I'm old fashioned. Most people would be like PDF. Like I'm an engineer, so I have EITs that come out of college. I've got like a bookcase full of all my books from college. And I'm like, whoa. Yeah, they do books on PDF. I'm a hold it person.
How many swarms do
We have had a lot of swarms. I can look it up here real quick. So I know we've gone through the list a couple of times. We are sitting at, as of today, 36 calls. Those are the ones that were confirmed as actual bees. The last three, unfortunately, were cutouts. Again, like I said, if we were going to send Xander, one of our members, is going out tomorrow to a tree that's fallen over and it's exposed to hive. So he's going to go remove it. And anybody that wants to go, come talk to me here before the end, and I'll give you his number so you can contact him. So, where it is itself, the hive is on 27 and a half row is where it fell over. So it's here in town. So we just got contacted by an arborist who'd been contacted by the homeowner that said, hey, this tree just fell over. And when they got there, they found bees. And he sent me some pictures, and I can even show you the pictures here in a little bit if you want, but it's fallen over. The hive is exposed. You can see the brood comb and all the wax comb and stuff in there. So we're hoping they're going to be there till tomorrow, just because he couldn't get there tonight. A cutout. So for us, a swarm, when we're talking about swarms, that's when a good chunk of the bees move out. And what we hope to do is they move out and they're like teenagers, like, we're out of here, but we don't know where we're going. So we're going to go hang out over here, and then we're going to send out scouts to go find a place. And that's when you see the ball on the tree or on the fence on the side of the house. That's where we hope to catch them, so we can knock them into a box and catch them. A cutout turns out to be when all of a sudden they found a spot and you had a hole in your side or you had a hole in your E and they moved into there. So we have to literally go in there and cut the hive out of the wall or out of the attic. And that's where it gets to be a real pain in the butt. I do my best, we do our best to evaluate those. There's certain people that say, have construction skills and they're ready to do it. This one just, like I've got one that it's in a tree and it's in a good solid tree. Unless we cut down the tree, we can do a thing called a trap out, which is where you try to get all the bees out and hopefully eventually the queen comes out, but the success rate on that is very, very minimal, 20-ish%. Other than that, it's like, we got to cut this tree down. And they're like, well, we don't want to lose our nice, pretty tree. Well, the only other option then is garden hose, bye-bye bees. But the good thing, at least in this valley, most of the reputable pesticide applicators will refuse. If you say you have bees, they will refuse to go get them until they call the swarm line. And usually I get the phone call and we go out and evaluate it, and then they'll call me and I'll say, yeah, unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. You got to spray. There's other places that they just spray. The worst one is when we go to cut out and they decide, Oh, yeah, no, nobody's ever sprayed and you get out there and you find a can of rake laying on the ground with a bunch of dead bees and go, yeah, sure, you didn't spray this, Mr. Homeowner. So, but we do what we can. Unfortunately, we're not miracle workers, but sometimes they see, oh, you're a beekeeper. You can do, you can just talk, you can just look at the bees and they're gonna do what you want to do. They haven't read that book yet either. Did I answer that question? Any other questions there? Okay, then I guess we'll do, remember, we're gonna go ahead and do the Q&A next, in 2 weeks on that Wednesday, 6:30 on Zoom, and then the next meeting, potluck, so.
So again, those of you that bought a nuke for Jason this year, just come up here and we'll work with